I agree. I agree.
Okay. In theory, we're live. Actually feels really weird. I was like about to put my mask on when I was going to start talking to you.
This is so it's gotten to the point, I don't know about you. I'm like having nightmares now, not about being naked in public, but about being caught without a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And like I haven't been out in public at all. So
Yeah.
like the less than 10 times I've left my yard has
Yeah.
been enough to damage my psyche, so that I had like the ultimate academic nightmare last night of I it was midway through the semester. I was enrolled in a math class I hadn't been attending. I was completely lost, had nothing to turn in, couldn't find the room, and I didn't have a mask.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, that is. I have definitely had some of those kinds of experiences. And don't you also get the experience where you're watching like a TV show or a movie where people are interacting and you're like,
No,
social distancing,
don't do
hello?
that. Yeah, yeah. I have resorted to watching almost purely fantasy and science fiction. Like it's not this society, it is not this time, it is a different place. We're gonna go
Yeah.
contemplate that.
Yeah, totally. I'm just like, oh man, it is so weird. Yeah.
So
Weird times. And it's funny. We've talked about this a little bit that you got, like, I'm talking to all my US friends and you're all
yeah,
getting vaccinated and you're all
yeah,
getting sorted out.
yeah.
And this is where people forget that I'm not an American. And so people are like, oh yeah, we're getting, I got back. I've already got my first shot and I'm getting my second shot in about 2 weeks. What about you? I'm like, we don't live in America. You're the ones who make the vaccine. We are the customer. We've got to wait. You remember, sort of the whole point of this was to make sure that Americans were well protected.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rest
We're
of us have to
sorry.
wait. Now, the good news is nobody in the U.S. wants to take their vaccination, so we'll take it.
Right. Yeah, that is actually a real problem.
I know.
Where
I know.
one of the reasons that there are so many places now that are like, okay, we're opening up to like age 16 and above,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
we are opening up to all healthy adults.
Yeah.
It's because there's not enough people taking the vaccines.
Yeah. So here, we just got the email that 85-year-olds are allowed to get it. Right? 85-year-olds. Like my dad can't get the vaccine yet. That's where we're
Yeah.
at. He's too young.
Yeah.
He's too healthy. Like, what do I got to do?
I don't know.
Can I just like
don't know.
eat like a whole bunch of, I don't know, like really bad food?
So
Make myself really sick?
Kyle qualified because he's obese. So apparently all the amazing workouts and dieting you did
Right.
was your downfall.
Did the right. So, I shouldn't have gotten into such good shape. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do an episode of Astronomy Cast, and you're going to watch. And then we will stick around.
You, not me.
No, you're going to be part of this. And then we're going to stick around, and we're going to answer your questions about space and or astronomy. The trickier, the better. Until the end of the hour. So, I'm ready, I think.
I need to press record. I have a new mic.
Oh, do you? Prove it.
It's absolutely identical to the old mic. The old mic died.
This is isn't it funny? This is how it is now, right? Is that like for me, like with gear, like I pick one piece of gear, I use it until it's destroyed, and then I just go out and find the exact identical replacement, and just keep going. right?
Yeah, the place that I killed it was the port where the plug goes in. So I'm going to try and take it apart and restore it to at least backup status.
Right.
But this time I'm like, I shall make it so that I will never strain that port
Right.
again.
But it's funny, like, like if a piece of gear goes bad on me, I don't spend a moment thinking like, what's the better what could I get that's better? No. This has already been like, if this microphone breaks, I'm going to find this precise microphone and get it again because I know that it works and that everything connects and it all fits in. So I think when you become a craftsperson with your whatever it is that you do, you no longer. That's how you can almost tell the amateurs from the pros. Is the pros don't care at all about what's new and what's better. They just need it to not break.
Yeah, I have to admit, I fell in love yet again with B&H Photo, which is an amazing source of microphones. Because I went to the Shure website to see if the mic I had was still being made. That was concern number one. And they showed the exact one I had was no longer on their website, but there was a newer one and yet a newer one with $50 in price between those two. And I couldn't figure out what was the difference between the two of them.
That's bait.
Well, so I went to B&H and B&H Photo was completely blunt. The only thing that changed is the packaging. One came with USB-C and the other one came with the older USB. That was the only thing that changed.
Right.
The cable and the packaging.
But there could be a world of hurt in that cable update. So
yeah, but it was
don't trust
USB to USB-C versus USB to other USB.
Yeah.
And I'd already upgraded my cable to USB-C, so I was not concerned.
Yeah, I'm just saying. No, I would do the same. I would have done the same, which was like, I like USB-C. Yeah, it's better.
And it's what I already had set up.
Yep.
So I literally bought the old one for $50 less because it's the exact same microphone.
Yes.
And I have a USB-C.
Yeah. All right.
I'm really fascinated by the angles of the bricks behind me as distorted by my camera.
It's a perspective thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Let me know when you're ready to press record. With this fancy new microphone that's the same as the old microphone.
I have pressed record.
We
are recording. Hello, Ali. Hello, Rich. Hello, humans who edit us. So we're less idiotic.
Astronomy Cast, episode 599, Zodiacal Light. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser, Cain, publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, Dr. Pamela Gay, senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I am doing well. I have a new microphone. It is identical to the old microphone. The microphone is dead. Long live the identical microphone.
Right. This is the new something, same as the old something. What's happening? 599. We are one episode away from a completely irrelevant number, 600.
It's still kind of cool to know we've been ticking along here. What's really starting to get to me is the number of people who are like, yeah, I started listening to you when I had my kid and they're now a teenager.
Yeah. Now they're a senior citizen. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of those emails where someone's like, I started listening to you when I was a teenager and I just got my doctorate.
Yes. Or people coming up to us at conferences. This happened in Hawaii. I started listening to you in high school. I'm now a postdoc.
Now I'm a postdoc. Yep, exactly. No, I don't feel old. But thank you for bringing that up.
But it is a good excuse to, especially now that we've had this year's AAS meeting and LPSC meeting, to basically say, these are the things we're now looking forward to. So that's next week.
But you know what? I'm just going to say that I hope, seeing us do this 599 times, have some sense that there's a stability going on, that Pamela and I are in this for the long haul, that we're going to keep bringing you space and astronomy goodness for, I think, as long as we live. You should join our Patreon. You know, yeah. Why don't you?
We're here until our voices
give out,
break down.
Exactly, and we rejoin the cosmos. So
exactly,
go to patreon.com/astronomycast, and you can just support the work that we do and help make sure that we can get as much space and astronomy information freely available and educate as many people in the world about what's going on in the cosmos.
So, yeah, it's awesome. Help us do more awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela has told us in the most flowery terms about the diffuse dust across the inner solar system left over from the formation of the inner planets. Well, it turns out she was wrong. Super wrong. Time to update. And we'll get into that and all the levels of Pamela's wrongness after this short break. And we're back. So, Pamela.
Yeah.
Zodiacal light.
Yeah.
Yeah. You brought it up many times, and it is always about this cool idea that you can go out, take some pictures, you can see this leftover dust from the formation of the solar system.
Well, and also I've said from comets, from asteroids hitting into each other.
Yeah. Nope. All wrong.
I was so wrong.
I love it. I love it. It's funny. We did this. We covered this topic over on the Weekly Space Hangout, and Moya McTeer was the one who brought up the story, and she was like, "Yeah, I found this story," and I couldn't believe how important this is. This was the biggest news of the week, probably the biggest news of the month, in my opinion, and one of the big news stories of the year. And I think as amateur astronomers, we are all about zodiacal light. So. To get that picture, and it's like one of those achievements. You get Aurora.
Have you succeeded?
Light. Never. No, I've never seen it. I've never taken a picture of it. Never.
Oh man, I've gotten to see it a few times. The most striking was I was in South Africa at the observatory they have north of Cape Town in Sutherland, and a group of us had spent the night just watching the southern sky rotate above us, and we thought dawn was coming, and it wasn't the dawn.
Wow.
It was the zodiacal light becoming that much brighter as the angle between us, the dust, and the sun got smaller and smaller. And it was really this striking column shooting up from the sky and going in the angle, tracing towards where all the planets were along the elliptical. It was really awesome.
Oh, yeah. Amazing. Okay. All right. So what is it?
Well, observationally from Earth, it is the glow of backscattered light from the sun. So when we look out in space, there's this toroid of dust particles, a donut of dust particles around the sun. And the sunlight going out past the Earth hits these dust particles and scatters back toward us. Now, So it's
like light pollution. So it's like light pollution in the inner solar system.
But it's so faint that a bright Jupiter can drown it out, and any amount of light pollution from cars, humans, streetlights, the moon, you can't see it. So you really do need to go to a dark sky park, a observatory of some kind, where there are actually dark skies, and check the calendar to make sure there's no moon first.
All right, and then just to really rub this in one last time, what did you used to say zodiacal light was?
I used to say it was leftover dust scattered from comets' tails, from asteroids colliding together, and other events that messed up our solar system.
Right. And
I was wrong.
And so what do we now know zodiacal, like this week? We have this
week.
Yeah.
And these are results that come from the Juno mission. The Juno spacecraft flew through the vicinity of the asteroids, flew through the vicinity of Mars, traveled on its way out toward Jupiter. And along the way, they were studying zodiacal light dust particles in the most amazing way.
Yeah.
And And they realized
The way you would
particles,
study bugs as they smashed against your windshield.
a little worse than that.
Yeah.
Um,
Bugs made
but
of
they
metal.
realized, they realized that the orbit of the dust particles that make up the zodiacal light matches the orbit of Mars, and Mars or its moons, or possibly its dust storms,
Right.
are somehow to blame for the zodiacal light we see.
And so this is the payoff. This idea that in fact all of this zodiacal light, this dust that you see just after sunset, just before sunrise, is just Mars. Dirt from Mars filling this entire donut space. Now, you mentioned a few possible sources of where this dust could be coming from, and we will get to that in 1 second. But first, let's have another break. And we're back. Bonked my microphone. That was scary. All right. And we're back. All right. So let's talk about what are the possible sources of this, because now if this sort of, and in fact, we'll talk about the possible sources, and then we'll sort of think about the consequences of this. But you mentioned some briefly. Let's go through them one by one. It comes from the moons of Mars?
Well, so let's back up one step further to what we know.
Okay.
What we know is dust particles that think sandstorm dust storm over Beijing, dust storm over the Sahara, dust storm over Tucson. Dust flying through the universe, specifically our solar system, at thousands and thousands of miles per hour, hit the giant solar panels on the Juno mission, some of the largest solar panels out there, and chipped off pieces of the solar panels. And those chipped off pieces, based on their size and their velocity, allowed scientists to determine the velocity, mass, energy combination of that dust. So basically it's like throwing small rocks.
Yeah, flying through sandpaper.
Yeah. And then figuring out what hit you based on the chip that gets knocked off and where it lands.
Right. And so was the damage to Juno more than scientists were expecting that it would face going through this region of the solar system?
It wasn't significantly different, but it was different. We weren't expecting to have things that had this kind of an orbit, and the pieces of dust were on average a bit bigger than expected. But to be clear, Juno's solar panels are fine.
Right.
They are huge. This was minimal damage. This was damage in the name of science. I'm pretty sure everyone's good with this.
Right. Okay. And so now astronomers, based on these trajectories, based on the size, based on other factors, they were able to determine that this was material that had come from Mars.
Comes from Mars, and this is because it has the same orbital characteristics, the same tilt relative to all the other planets.
Right.
And the same eccentricity even. So it's the same amount of not a circle as Mars orbit.
same amount of not a circle. That's a great way of describing eccentricity. But yeah, like it follows the same elliptical orbit around the sun as Mars does. And I think that angle is really important, that each of the planets they largely follow the plane of the ecliptic, but each one is a little off, a little tilted away.
Yeah, it's a badly nested group of hula hoops.
Right. Elliptical hula hoops. Bad hula hoops that are badly nested. So, all right. So now we've got this fairly convincing case that the dust does come from Mars. So then back to my original question. You mentioned three possibilities. So let's go through these one by one. So what would it mean if this dust came from the moons of Mars?
Well, if it came from the moon of Mars, this is actually not too bad of a thing to try and understand. because these are little tiny moons. They don't have a lot of gravity. If you hit them fairly hard, chunks are going to fly off. And in fact, there are theories that describe the formation of the moons as being a cyclical process where different objects over time have been torn apart and come back
Huh.
together. So this is actually reasonable. More information specifically about the composition of the moons, the composition of the dust is needed. Juno didn't have the capabilities to do something like that.
Wow.
But it's completely reasonable that stuff would come from the moons. But it's a lot of stuff, and they're little tiny moons.
Right.
So yeah.
That would be tricky. Okay. So that's the first possibility, is that you've got this stuff coming from the moons. And so you can just imagine they're getting impacted, debris is flying off of the moons, it's making its way into space, but it seems like a surprising amount of dust. Enough to give amateur astronomers something to chase after. It seems quite impressive. So the next idea you mentioned was maybe Mars itself?
Yeah. And so here the science teams have actually mentioned the possibility that even though they can't explain how it would happen, that the dust storms that periodically completely enshroud Mars, these are the same dust storms that are responsible for the death of the Opportunity rover, little Opie, when it was no longer able to get enough sunlight to keep itself warm and talking with Earth. These world enshrouding dust storms, we know they kick dust up into the uppermost levels of Mars' atmosphere. But then the question becomes, when you have a world like this, is it possible that some of that dust is somehow put on escape trajectories?
Right.
And they can't really explain that. But what they're seeing seems consistent with that particular type of dust just filling our solar system.
And I think this is really impressive when you think about, as you said, that these dust storms, these giant dramatic dust storms that every few years will fill the entire planet. And it doesn't seem unreasonable. And yet the atmosphere only goes so high. It's not that thick. And to hit escape velocity from Mars, although it has lower gravity, seems impressive. Maybe
but
if
this is a lot of material that had to hit escape velocities, admittedly over the billions of years of our universe and our solar system in particular, the 5 some odd billion years of our solar system.
But that would also mean, I mean, we know that back in the day, Mars was a water world, that, like the Earth, that it was, had water on it. It had cooler temperatures. It didn't have just these constant blowing dust storms, and yet over time the planet died, the dust storms kicked up, and so this zodiacal light is not a mark of the creation of the solar system. It's a memory of the death of Mars, an ongoing reminder that Mars is a dead world.
And it could be an ongoing reminder that it's a world that's gotten knocked about pretty violently over the eons. And we know that whatever it was that hit the Earth and killed the dinosaurs, creating the Chicxulub crater, the shockwaves from that sent dirt, rubble, and very dead dinosaurs at escape velocities out of our atmosphere.
And I mean, we have some situations that are somewhat similar. Like when you think about, say, the rings of Saturn, although the source of most of the rings of Saturn aren't known, we know that the E ring has material that has been blasted out by the ice volcanoes on Enceladus and have gone into orbit around Saturn. And so you've got this source of dust that is being sprayed into a ring. And so there's a similar version of that. All right, well, we'll continue to search for a possible source of this dust in a second. But first, let's have another break. And we're back. So those both seem to have problems. And what was the third idea?
I don't remember actually stating
did you not?
A third.
Okay,
no.
I thought it was just Mars getting smashed by asteroids in the past and that being turned into...
Well, so that is a true thing, but we kind of incorporated in there.
Okay, all right.
But so here's the thing. This is a data release of we saw this dust. We cannot fully explain the dust yet. We realize from the orbit of the dust that it seems to originate from Mars. And another factor that's consistent with this is there was a sharp cutoff in the distribution of the dust as the spacecraft got closer to Jupiter, to that region of space where Jupiter's gravitational influence would have said, I don't want any of this dust, and sent the dust to other places. So the distribution dynamically is consistent with Mars, Mars, Mars. And this allows us still at this point, without knowing the chemistry of it, to dream big. And so reading this, I was like, I wonder if it could have come at all from past volcanism. And there's these giant volcanoes. And if Etna
that is an awesome idea.
Yeah, and they did not say that. This is me as a scientist looking at what are all the possibilities, desperately wanting chemistry.
Well, desperately wanting supervolcanoes.
Well, there's that too. Yeah. It's a known phenomenon, people. I like volcanoes.
But I wonder if you had an Olympus Mons erupting, would it be throwing lava into solar orbit?
Well, it wouldn't be throwing lava, but it could be throwing
dust.
Ash.
Right.
And these are the things that we still need to figure out. And volcanic glass, as was experienced by a few too many aircraft when the unpronounceable Iceland volcano went off in 2010, it is nasty, shreddy stuff.
Yeah.
And this is to the point where I want to bring these scientists on for an interview and basically go, okay, how about, tell me, I want to know.
How about this? How about that? How about this? Yeah.
Right. Because on our world, Etna is able to fountain lava a kilometer up into the air. We saw the Icelandic volcanoes able to shoot things 6 kilometers up into the air.
Yeah.
And we have so much more gravity. So
on that note,
possible?
If you want, adorable volcano pictures, you should follow Pamela's Twitter feed. She put, it was like Etna yesterday, I think. Yeah. You're quite the volcano fan.
I stand for my volcanoes.
So I love this in so many ways that you have this thing that you thought you knew where it came from, and now new evidence pops in that goes, nope, here's the source. And now the question is, what's the mechanism? And now we're back to hypotheses again.
Yes.
And there's a few that the science, but again, like the discoverers, that it's not really their problem. Like, hey, we found this thing. It came from Mars, next. And now the scientific community goes at it and they propose hypotheses. And you just proposed one. Maybe it was volcanoes. Maybe it was asteroid impacts. Maybe it comes from the whatever event created the Martian moons. Maybe it's further evidence of it. Maybe it's
those dust storms.
Maybe it's those dust storms.
Cause craziness.
Yeah. And so now the question is trying to gather evidence for each one of these possible hypotheses, trying to figure out ways that you can falsify them. This is just a beautiful example of science in action. This is how it works.
Well, and it also raises the question of, where did all the dust from all the colliding asteroids go? Because we know those suckers collide because the asteroid Bennu is essentially the consistency of a ball pit in orbit. It's not a rubble pile in space unless the rubble's made of styrofoam in terms of what the spacecraft experienced. The gravity is so low. I don't know if you saw this, but Dante Loretta was saying that the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft would have gone meters in to the surface of Bennu had they not been firing rockets.
Wow.
Or thrusters, rather.
Right. It just would have gone plunging into it, like splashing into the rock of Bennu. That's amazing.
And so the gravitational pull that Bennu exerts on all of its own rocks is kind of like what Earth exerts on ball pit balls.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff out there. And so now we need to know, where did it go? Maybe Zodiacal dust will turn out to be a mixture of different things.
Right.
There's so many questions.
And so before we go, you have seen it, you have taken pictures of it. If people want to get photographs, because it's still beautiful, even though we have a new answer for it. If you want to capture an image of zodiacal light as an amateur astronomer, astrophotographer, how should you go about it?
Well, right now is actually a really good time. The best times of year to see it are around the equinoxes. The same is true of Aurora. So go out. I believe right now it's evening twilight is the best. Do double check me on that. And go out, look up in the twilight. And the reason I'm saying double check is I don't remember which of the two hemispheres its evening twilight is best for. And what you're waiting for is that moment before the sun's light starts to illuminate the sky, when the sunlight reflected off the dust creates a streak along the path that is filled with planets, the ecliptic across the sky.
Fantastic. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, you should go out and try.
Dark
skies.
place.
You need dark skies, yeah. All right, well, thank you, Pamela.
Bye-bye, everyone.
And do you have some names for us this week?
I do. So as always, our show is brought to you thanks to you. Your support allows us to pay our server costs, to pay Ali and Rich to edit our shows together, to pay Nancy to make sure that we don't get lost along the way, to have Beth doing all the social media work for us. It takes a team to do everything Fraser and I do, and to keep him and I on the straight and narrow, and we do require herding.
Hey, have you noticed that our shows start roughly on time every week?
We are now herded.
Yeah,
it is excellent. So this week, I would like to thank the generous contributions of, and I'm trying to figure out where the scroll bar is before I start trying to scroll. Okay, this is going to be fun scrolling, just to warn you. I'm sorry, cut this part out, Ali and Rich. All right, this week, I would like to thank the generous contributions of Matthew Horstman, Arthur Latz Hall, Omar Del Riviera, Tim Garish, John, Paul L. Hayden, Marco Izrasi, J. Alex Alexanderson, William Lauer, Jeremy Kerwin, Dustin A. Roth, Michelle Cullen, Brian Kelby, Brent Knopp, Mark Stephen Rasnack, Roland Warmerdam, The Lonely Sand Person, Stephen Coffey, Ronald McCoy, Aran Tannenbaum, Reuben McCarthy, Jeff McDonald, Wayne Johnson, Iggy Hemmick, Jordan Young, and Catherine McCabe. Thank you so much, all of you, for everything you do to support us month after month.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Right.
And now we save.
And then they saved.
Yes. Okay. And now I can drink my soda.
You mean your pop?
It's soda.
What does Kyle say?
He says either Diet Coke or 7-Up, depending on which he specifically wants.
All right. He never says pop? I don't think he's allowed back in the country.
I think he simply got teased so much when he first moved to Boston, because you don't call it pop in Boston. No one knows what to do with the word pop. I had a friend from Michigan really struggle trying to order soda at a beach.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't know if I've mentioned this in the past. For Carla, she calls it a Coke.
Uh-huh. What kind of a Coke do you want?
Yeah, what kind of a Coke do you want? And then
it's totally Southern.
Yeah, root beer. It's like, what? Yeah, and if you're like, I want Coke. What kind of Coke? Coke. Okay. That's madness. Madness.
Yes, you have described my nation nicely.
All right. Let us accept questions from the audience. Audience? Questions! Okay.
I'm opening up Twitch. Hello, Twitch humans.
I know there are some questions, but I just wanted to make sure that people really knew that they give us strength.
Bill Nash is kind of hilarious. He writes over on Twitch, Scientist A, dust has impacted the panels at high speed. Scientist B, licks dust. Look skyward. I have a vector in speed. Prepare the missiles. Yes. Except it's more like prepare the spectrometers.
How McKinney asks, would trailing gravitational bulge that a planet exerts on the sun's surface focus the sun's energy more to the trailing half of the orbiting planet, creating a preferred planetary axis of rotation?
So you don't have to be close enough to a star to disrupt its surface to the point of noticeable deformation to get tidally linked.
Right.
Mercury is, if it was less spherical, I suspect it would be tidally locked. It's currently in resonance with the sun. It's just not tidally locked to the sun.
Right.
The papers that I've read on stars that are on planets that are raising tides up on their stars, these are hot Jupiters on orbits that are like days, that are basically what feels like inches away from their stars. They're like 100 times closer than, am I doing my math right? Yeah. 100 times closer than the Earth. Yeah.
Yeah. So you need to be really close to the planet and have a mass that's pretty significant. Like you're going to get wacky situations with giant planets orbiting really close to red dwarf stars, but a star like the sun cares very little about anything that's orbiting around it.
This is true.
Arjone asks, does this invalidate Brian May's paper? Are you familiar with Brian May's paper?
I have to admit that I'm not. So for those of you, it's one of these things that I looked at, read the abstract, read the discussion, held on to the information for a few months, and then replaced it with other information.
I don't recall this passing my desk.
Huh. So for those of you who don't know, Brian May of Queen was a PhD candidate at Cambridge when the band took off. So he took a leave from his PhD, figuring when the band is no longer the thing, he'll go back to grad school. And tens of years later, he actually self-funded a fellowship for him to go to Cambridge and finish off his PhD. Well, the sad thing is, though, he kept going on the exact same topic because really no one had advanced the field of zodiacal light all that much in all those years.
Yeah.
And now one spacecraft blows it for everyone.
Oops. Oh, you figured you'd have some sway, some pull. Disasterine asks, when is Brian May going to be on? Now, we don't have guests on Astronomy Cast, so the answer is never. Like, just never. But we did try to get Brian May on the Weekly Space Hangout, and we were this close. And then he had to back out, and so we got his co-author on the book that he wrote, and that was close. So anytime, Dr. May, Sir Dr. May, Esquire, you want to come on any of our shows, we will be glad to have you. You'd welcome on Open Space, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about stereoscopic photographs of the lunar surface.
It would be cool.
I do love
that he did with Pluto on New Horizons.
Yeah, he did some great work with Pluto. I do love that they bring him out to discuss interesting stuff that's happening in spaceflight, planetary science. I think it's terrific.
Well, if you're gonna get the degree, you might as well use it.
Yeah. How often do they want to talk to him about music anymore? Who cares?
This is true.
Space.
This is true.
Yeah. But Disasterina, you know how this works. You become a member of the Weekly Space Hangout crew, then you get your executive producer privileges, and then you can invite anyone you want. And you're a patron of me. You tell me which guest you want, and we will work together and bring them on my show. So that's how this works. You gotta give a little to get a little. All right.
Who is the so this is one thing I have to admit. The Weekly Space Hangout crew producers have more guts for finding crazy famous humans who I wouldn't even expect to return mail, and not only get them to return the email, but to agree to be on the show.
I know.
Who's the guest that has most wowed you?
Let's see. Oh, so many. Jim Green, who is the director of planetary science for NASA.
See, I've met him enough times that for me, it's like, oh, that's the dude I've talked to in the hallway.
Sure. Okay. All right. Yeah. No, I mean,
Andy Weir. You had Andy Weir.
Yeah, I've talked to Andy Weir a bunch of times. Yeah, I mean, he's up for any kind of snarky conversation, so that's always fine. Man, this is just gonna sound so obnoxious, so I just need to preface this, which is like, there's no limit now. Like, we can talk to anybody. Anybody will take our call. Like, it is now we are limited merely by our imagination. I'm just scheduling a conversation with Michio Kaku, because he's got a new book coming out. So that's going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to be...
I don't know how you heard him during an interview.
I don't think it's going to be the interview he's expecting. So it'll be entertaining. But... there's been, I mean, it just goes on and on. I mean, tons of astronauts, tons of astronomers, lots of people, I've talked to Nobel Prize winners before and after they've gotten their Nobel Prizes. So it's a small world, and it's just kind of amazing. Like, and it just shows that you just ask. Like literally, how do I get the guests that I get? I just ask. I'm like, my name is Fraser Cain. I am the publisher of Universe Today. Would you like to... can I interview you on my YouTube channel? Here's a link to my YouTube channel.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Arjun is saying, did you talk to Martin Rees? Yeah, I talked to Martin Rees for like an hour. It was the best. He was so much fun. It was like we were like college buddies catching up.
He's a cool dude.
Yeah.
I've met him at conferences, and he's the kind of person where, like, in my fantasy world, he and Martin Short do a TV bit together. Like, I just need that to be a thing.
Yeah. I had an interview with Professor Benjamin Zuckerman this week, and he's at UCLA, and was at UCLA. He's retired now, and it was just such a great interview. So phenomenal. And I think that's the part that I find just so wonderful, is that I just get to talk to these people, and anyone who has reached some level of prominence in their field is going to be a really interesting person to talk to. And so I'm so fortunate when I get to have these conversations with these people.
Yeah. And
so the thing that I'm terrible at is just being organized enough to reach out to these people on a regular basis and get this stuff queued up. So the fact that I'm able to match up, match up with the people at the Weekly Space Hangout to actually, Visto Tutti, did a great job. Oh, I'm trying to remember who he lined. He's lined up a couple of people, and he lined me up on a couple of podcasts, which I thought was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's funny. Like, I go on and on about this every week at the Weekly Space Hangout, but I don't think people take me seriously about it. But it's like, yes, if you join the crew, and by join I just mean like show up.
Yeah.
They will give you everything you need to be an executive producer of the show. Day one, welcome your executive producerness. And then you get to reach out to anyone you want.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's so cool. It's so much fun. It's so much fun for me, and it's so much fun for them, and it's so much fun, I hope, for the person who's getting interviewed. Because a lot of the times you can sort of see it dawn on their face when I'm interviewing them that I know what I'm talking about. Right?
Yes.
And that's helpful. So it's wonderful. And so I just like the one thing that I can't do or don't have time to do is to just be an organized human being. All I can do is just show up and do my job and just interview people.
So, one of the mistakes I've made, if I am not the level of interviewer that you are. I'm so grateful to work with Beth
Yeah,
Johnson
no, but you're
because
getting so good. No. Like, but
yeah, well, it's not my strength and it is yours. And one of the mistakes that I periodically make if I'm way too interested in what the person is talking about is they suddenly get this, oh shit, this is a dissertation exam. Because I'm so used to you grilling me
right.
that I forget you shouldn't do that. Now, have you done the same inadvertent deer in headlights thing to other humans?
What do you mean? Like grill them to
Like
terrify
like
them?
well, not on purpose, but like they suddenly say something and you're super excited and you start asking scientifically on point
Right.
because you know what you're talking about
Right.
questions that they clearly were not expecting.
I, I guess the people who are watching it have to tell me, but I find
Okay.
that I try to get to a point where they realize that they don't have to dumb this down anymore.
Yeah.
That they can have a conversation as in depth as they need to, and I will
Keep up.
rein them in if I feel like
Yeah.
it needs to happen. Just like I've interview done with you for 599 episodes.
Yes.
And then apart from that, no. I think I want to get past the like what is a planet
Yeah,
and
no,
get
you see, I think I've taken a little too far a few times.
yeah no I don't think you
And
can go far enough. I think you should always be right out there in the cutting edge, and I think that's way more interesting than to force these experts in this field to cover really simplistic ground. You want to get right out to the edge of knowledge as quickly as possible, and then just frolic around in the newly discovered things, the things that we don't understand, the things that
yeah.
that keep them awake at night. That's my favorite.
So favorite random factoid of the week. I've been and I've tweeted this, so forgive me if you saw this on Twitter. Alan Stern put out a paper talking about how subsurface oceans are likely safer places for life than the surface of planets like Earth.
Right.
And a Dean Denton put out a presentation showing how various dynamical models of seismic waves moving through Pluto seem to indicate that if Sputnik Planitia, the heart, is an impact crater, then the chaos terrain on the opposite side, that's exactly antipodal, could have been formed if there's a 150-kilometer thick ocean
Right.
in Pluto.
Like some kind of water hammer punching through
Yeah.
the planet, or the dwarf planet.
Well, whatever you call it,
Depends
world. I
whether
like
Alan
the word
Stern's
world.
listening or not. Yeah.
But if Pluto has an ocean that is tens to 100 kilometers beneath an icy crust, and that ocean is 150 kilometers thick, and you calculate that volume, and you compare that volume to the volume of all of Earth's water, and the surface area of land plus or minus half a kilometer, within error, both worlds have the same volume for life.
Wow. Except one's
So,
being hit by constant sunlight, and the other one is incredibly frigid, powered only by
yeah, so
radiation and
so I'm thinking Pluto's not likely to have big life. We're
Mhm.
not talking sperm whales, but
yeah. There's no European whales on Pluto.
no.
Um,
Jellyfish. I'm hoping for jellyfish or sponges like the ones found in Antarctica.
Oh, Guido is saying I tried to get one of the ESA astronauts once, but the red tape at the EAC was sadly too thick. Yeah, in the olden days, it used to be a little rough to get people at NASA. They would have to wait. You have to schedule in advance. They'd have to have a person from NASA in the room. It was, and they have since learned that, like, whether they trust us or whether they've just learned it's just not worth it anymore. Like, they're fine. These people are not children. They can do it.
Yeah.
So, um,
I think it's more they've gotten used to knowing that you were not going to embarrass NASA.
Yes, yeah, but it is funny when I do have someone scheduled and they don't know who I am and they don't know what this is about, and I'm just like, you wrote a great paper, I want to interview you. Who are you again, and what's this about?
Yes,
I liked your paper. Let's talk. Okay.
I think the general reaction that you're not hearing is, wait, someone actually read my paper
Yeah, I know,
other than
I know.
the peer reviewers?
I know. Well, it just shows how much. Like, people always wonder if I'm concerned at all about the competition, about all these people who are reporting on space and astronomy news, and I'm just like, I'm so not. There's so much interesting ideas that are just fountaining out all the time.
Yeah.
Like, if Universe Today never covered a story that was covered in any other publication,
there's still so much
we
stuff
would be
out
so
there.
busy. Yeah, we would be so busy. Just scoop after scoop after scoop. But yeah,
there are hundreds of pages per day that come out.
Per day. And then you have these conferences. Like, there's the LPSC that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Disgorging stuff. And it's all in this raw form.
And there were no press releases related to the stuff that I mentioned about Pluto or about Bennu.
Yeah.
If it's, Dante Loretta, we need to have him on to talk about this encounter, because the fact that OSIRIS-REx could have buried itself by accident inside of an asteroid.
Yeah.
Just
I feel like we have
no
interviewed
end.
in the past, but I'm wondering if maybe I never have.
I
feel like
don't
I know I've
know.
talked to him. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is a long way of saying that take it to the next step, everybody. If you it's incredibly rewarding to reach out to one of these people who is one of your heroes and to say, hey, can you come on this show that I'm a part of? And the show, people know the show and people know what we do and they know that it's a safe environment. We're not going to gotcha. So they're often happy to say hi, and you get to see an interview done that you got to be a part of. And who knows, you might there's gigantic demand for this kind of work on the internet. Like, there are all these YouTubers and podcasters and stuff, and they're all overwhelmed and they're all begging for help. And, and not many of them are in the position that we are, that we can actually start to pay some of the team. Can't pay ourselves, but at least we can pay some of the team.
Well, and what I'm really enjoying is we can bring a certain joy and silliness to this, because we understand science is a process that sometimes includes side steps and back steps and weird things that happen on the way to the spacecraft. And the days that we can say to someone, you did something awesome, tell us all the weird stuff that happened in the process.
Yeah.
It's good to find joy.
Yeah, totally. Hal McKinney's asking, do we have a master list of all the interviewees we've had? No.
No. No.
That's all we can do is show up and do our part, right? Like, what can I do? I can interview whoever you want. Just tell me. Right? That's it. Like, I'm busy. I don't have time to make a list. I just move on, interview and move on. So I think that and just in general, just if there's any broadcaster, YouTuber, podcaster, Twitch streamer, whatever, that if this is work, a field that you want to get into, everybody needs so much help. And a lot of them probably, they need people to help herd them, to help wrangle all the parts, because we just have to just be messy eaters. So we just have to leave all this wreckage behind us.
And speaking of help, we have one more show scheduled, episode 600, looking ahead. And then I need to plan out the rest of the year until we go into summer hiatus. I know that ocean worlds are going to play a role in that, but if there's other things that you want to hear about, let us know because we're getting ready to set that schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't get it in here, you're just going to have to go wait for the
Yeah.
fall. Do you have any cool summer things that you're already starting to think about?
No, I dare not.
I want to redo the roof, the ceiling in the room
Oh,
that I
I
record
see.
in.
That's ooh, you live it up.
It's
No, so based on what we were talking about earlier, that we're not expected to have all Canadians.
yeah.
They think by the end of September, any Canadian who wants to be vaccinated will have gotten vaccinated. So we can't really make any kind of plans. My
Yeah.
plan
So
is steady as she goes.
yeah,
More mountain
it's
biking.
the one thing I want to do double masked once I'm fully vaccinated is go to IKEA and sit in chairs because my home office upstairs that has the identical bookcase to Fraser's bookcase. That room has a window air conditioning unit, and our downstairs air conditioning died at the end of last summer, and it's a Freon system, and it's going to cost a gazillion dollars to replace it. So we're probably going to procrastinate as long as possible. But once I can move upstairs to my upstairs office, which is unheated, which is why I'm currently in the basement, our house is old. It has issues.
Yeah.
The ceiling in here, the plaster is periodically dropping off. There's an episode of Weekly Space Hangout where like I suddenly jumped sideways as a chunk of the ceiling came down.
Wow.
You can actually let me see if I can get the chunk on camera. So you
Yeah, I see it.
it's let me get it. So yeah, this is why I need to replace
That's
the
awesome.
ceiling. So yeah, there.
That's
Sorry
funny.
about that. I've completely destroyed my alignment and my focus. But
Yeah, you're
so
gonna be
I
out of
just want to
focus
go I just want to go sit in IKEA chairs,
down. Yeah.
find a new chair. Why won't you focus?
People are asking about Avi Loeb. No, he didn't back out. No, it's all our fault. We got on the Weekly Space Hangout. We had him scheduled. Originally, I thought it was going to be I was going to do an interview with him, and then there was also going to be an interview on the Weekly Space Hangout. And then we had to cancel that week of the Weekly Space Hangout, and so now I got to reschedule with him, and that's like a thing that I've got to do. So, but I have interviewed him. So if you actually go back, you're going to remain out of focus forever. If you do a search for Fraser, Cain, Avi Loeb, you will see an interview I did with him a couple of years ago, and it'll be a roughly the same conversation, which is, again, I've mentioned this a few times. I'm super not interested in talking about whether or not Oumuamua is a spacecraft, and more interested in how astronomers with clout can help encourage researching ideas that are outside of the mainstream, non-traditional, while at the same time balancing scientific rigor. And that, I think, that's the conversation. And we had a bit of that conversation. If you see the times I've talked to David Kipping, I talked to him 2 weeks ago. And that's he's another example. Jason Wright, there's a bunch of these astronomers. And in fact, Benjamin Zuckerman, and we talked about that as well, that there are a bunch of these people who have one foot in really heady scientific stuff, but then they also have another foot in the validating science fiction. And I think that's wonderful. And I love to see that. And I want more of that conversation, because I think that new researchers come into this because they want to achieve their science fiction. Sci-fi brought you into this, right?
Yeah, it totally did. And it's not just sci-fi. There's a researcher, Donald, I can't remember his last name. He's at Sam Houston down in Texas. And he and his students will find artwork and figure out what day was the artist painting based on the sun and the shadows. And at least once a year, it feels like there's a new painting where the details in the place are uncovered. In one case, they figured out what room overlooking a city was the artist likely sitting in.
That's amazing. So cool.
And it's all different pathways into science.
Yep. All right. I think we've reached the end of our hour. It's that time. So thank you, Pamela, for joining us this week, bringing the brain. Thank you, everyone, for watching, all the moderators. Nightbot, fearless Nightbot, timing out, poor DPI 209. But thank you, everybody, for watching. And, of course, all of our friends at the weekly Space Hangout crew. Remember, go to wshcrew.space, and you can be an executive producer of the show and bring on guests. Not just for that, but also for my YouTube channel as well. So, all right.
And we get plenty of help over on CosmoQuest. I have to say, so much thanks to the crew that helps us with our weekly rocket roundup. Kerbal, Keeper of Maps, our Instro, the entire lot of you. You make what we do possible.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you all next week for episode 600.
600.
All right. See you later.